After reading chapter 6, the lesson that stood out to me the most was the I think, I act, and act like a penguin. Just like penguins, we have to learn to survive and dig deeper in the classroom and in overall general education. Penguins have to find food under the iceberg, deep down under the iceberg. So, in the five levers, structure and sample sit just above that waterline. Standards, self, and strategy are the foundation of those two other levers, and they are under the waterline. So they're not as visible as structure and sample. We as teachers have to dig and find and strengthen that foundation to improve student learning. I can compare this lesson in my previous experiences when, as a new teacher, you are giving the tools, you are giving the structure, and you can do the sample. You can look at other teachers and compare and structure your classroom, rearrange your needs. But the real learning comes from the strategies that you used, and they're not as easy to find. And how do you understand their conceptions of themselves as learners? So, those are questions that you should ask yourself. How do I apply the strategies that I've learned to better and to improve student learning? I kind of apply this lesson to my current experience as a pre-K teacher in transforming my teacher capacity and student learning based on the penguin analogy of the five levers by improving my knowledge and skills of, in my case, the guidelines. I can better serve my students if I know what I need to teach first. I need to build that foundation, and I need to use all the five levers together to improve and transform the students' learning and my capacity to teach. My takeaway after reading this lesson as a leader is the importance of teaching teachers. Giving them the tools of these analogies are so important. It will help teachers remember the lessons by comparing them with real life scenarios, situations, and comparing them to classroom instruction. They will retain the information better, and it can help them improve their classroom learning. I believe all levers work together. I don't think one is more important than the other. I think if you, for example, if you use structure on its own, you rearrange the classroom grouping and redecorate, and this will not improve learning on its own. You have to use all the five levers together. Another example would be if you use, when you have new standards, you use new strategies to teach them, and you implement and link them together to student conceptions of selves as learners. Then there you can see and improve and transform student learning. There you have used strategies, standards, and self. So you've used three different levers. And if you add, those are the great foundations. Then if you add the sample and the structure on top of it, then you will have you will have great results. In chapter number 4, strategy, it mentions three different vignettes. In my past experiences at my school, I've seen an implementation in technology where this new initiative does not work. After 2 years, we found that this new initiative, this new computer program, is not changing the learning. It's not improving learning. We moved to a new computer program to measure data, to measure students' skills, and to reinforce those skills that each learner needed. After a few years, after a couple years, we've noticed that there was still frustration in teachers reading that data and working with students. There was no time to help students when they were out of the grade level. So, for example, if students were in grade level in third grade, they couldn't. If they passed all of the grade level skills, it kept moving them up to fourth grade skills, fifth grade skills, so even junior high skills. So some students were stuck at a level and they were not able to keep going since the teacher, without assistance, without teaching those skills from a teacher. So that was a program that was not working. It was an initiative that was not working. It was a strategy that the school tried to use and it did not work. On question number 2, in this book, Frontier and Rickabaugh assert that teaching and medicine are both professions where the strategy used by the practitioner implements and improves and brings a difference in the outcomes to the ones being served. For example, teachers are different strategies that we use by grade level or by student. Brings different outcomes for each. As we all know, all different learners learn differently in different ways. And as well as in medicine, when you go to the doctor as patients, depending on how well the doctor explains their treatment or explains their diagnosis, then the patient, there's a different outcome for each patient. On question number 3, it's asking, how do the findings in John Hattie's How Students Learn and Visible Learning support an emphasis on improved instructional strategies? So from the findings in John Hattie's How Students Learn, there are 3 different principles that support learning. Number 1, students come with a preconception of how the world works. So in this case, if teachers bring those preconceptions and change it and model it and use their background knowledge and engage those students, then we can change those preconceptions. But students have to be engaged. If they're not motivated in learning what they need to know, they'll go back outside of the classroom and go back to those preconceptions that they had. Principle number 2, students must have a foundation of factual knowledge, understanding facts and ideas, and organized knowledge in ways that facilitate retrieval and application. Principle number 3, a metacognitive approach to instruction can help students retain and learn to take control of their own learning. So, teaching them how to be independent. Hattie also found that instructional strategies related to the quality of teaching, such as RTI and feedback to students, were the highest in influencing student learning. On question number 4, one example of leverage error of transactional implementation of instructional practice is the 7-step model. Back in the 80s, they were not using this model correctly. They were using this model when evaluating teachers as a checklist. So it was being misunderstood where every element had to be in every lesson. Teachers also thought that if little is good, more must be better. This model was being used as a framework for requiring lessons instead of a framework to inform professional practice. On question number 5, the characteristics of systems that develop expertise have been well articulated knowledge base for teaching, opportunities for focused feedback and practice, opportunities to observe and discuss expertise in various components, clear criteria, and a plan for success and recognition of expertise. On question number 6, some of the implications for how the systems of expertise might inform efforts when grading takes time and practice. If teachers are being evaluated in a system that has a checklist, for example, if we're not using the 7-step model correctly, then teachers are being told to use strategies, but they're not being told on being purposeful on those strategies for each learner. So teachers are just being told and they're doing it. Okay, they don't know why they have to use better instructional strategies. They just do it. So the implications overall to improve instructional strategies is that teachers need to be empowered as learners to affect student learning. In my past experiences in school, I've seen the vignettes presented in this chapter of the 5-lever book, chapter 5, Self. Vignette number 4 is very popular in most schools. In my school, I've seen it in a way where teachers feel like their job is to prepare students to not need them anymore. So students are not included in decisions and rules and expectations. It's told, they're told by the teachers. So a lot of teachers still work in that manner of I tell you what to do and students have to comply. Instead of including the students in their expectations and the rules to prepare them for independence. Students need to learn how to own their learning. On question number 2, focusing on conceptions of self can be used to build student motivation by tasks and learning activities that are relevant and meaningful to each learner, and rewards and assessments and autonomy and learner choice are some of the conceptions that we can use to build motivation. To build engagement, students can connect the content and substance of what they are learning to their interests and goals. So also teachers can organize the content for it to make sense to the students. That way, their engagement grows. In the case of self-efficacy, the learner believes that they can control their own learning and their academic outcomes. So when we get the students for them to be self-efficacy, to have self-efficacy, it starts with setting goals for them to know what goals do they need to reach and how to reach those goals. Helping students identify and use strategies will raise self-efficacy. To build ownership through self, the learner needs choices and control. So we have to give them opportunities for them to learn through their own mistakes and also learn through their goals. And we need to give them choices and control what works for them and what doesn't work for them. For independence, everything builds on itself, starting with motivation. We go back to motivation. The students are motivated and engaged to learn and to build on their own learning, then they gain the power to understanding their effort, the strategies needed, and they are persistent. If they're persistent with their own learning, only then they will begin to own their learning, and they will become more independent. Question number 3, the implications for the statement that all learning is personal. For curriculum is that to make sure, us as teachers, we have to make sure that that curriculum works for all students, that we are differentiating on what we need. Sometimes we need to add, sometimes we need to take away, depending on the type of learners that we have. They all not learn the same. They each have their own personal learning style. So, in instruction as well, the learning conditions and challenge will indicate the frame for learners to be used as a resource to support each other. So we are purposeful in that instruction where we are providing opportunities for each learner to be used as a resource. So we can use students as peer tutors, or they can collaborate. That way they learn more, they learn what they haven't learned yet, and they teach others the lesson, so they will understand it better, and sometimes students understand it better from their peers. When assessing students, we can learn from each student and gain feedback on the effectiveness of our instruction. So assessment can be a great tool for us to gain that knowledge of what's working, what strategy is working for each student. Informal assessments, looking at their journals, can help us know what is working, what strategies are working, so they can plan and learn. They can journal, and they can plan for each what strategies are working for them, and how they might employ another strategy. We need to give students opportunities to learn independently. We give each learner a purposeful strategy to learn. So for me, all learning is personal.